What's that sound?
It's a Hip Hop Cloverleaf Podcast.
Hip Hop Cloverleaf.
What up? Let's go.
Cloverleaf Podcast.
Thank you for tonight. Yes.
You are now listening
I'm ready.
to the Hip Hop Cloverleaf Podcast.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the Hip Hop Cloverleaf Podcast. We are your host. I am EC, and it's your boy O. And so today we have a short episode for you. We're just gonna touch on the hip hop origins. We're gonna focus on graffiti. Fun. Stay tuned. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the Hip Hop Cloverleaf Podcast.
What's
man.
goody?
What's up, Bo? How you doing today? Beautiful
Good,
morning, man.
Absolutely.
Well, not
You
really.
know
It's
it?
kind of cloudy outside, but it's kind of gray. But it's cool.
But feeling good still. That doesn't mean you can't feel good.
That is true.
Big
man.
facts.
Big facts. All right, man. Today we don't really got any short segment for you guys. We're gonna hit straight onto the meat of the show, man. No, oh, okay. All right, well, come on. Man, let's get into it. We got the hip hop origins today. We're getting into graffitiing, man. So we're gonna kind of split this up into, I think, 3 sections. We got the origins. We're gonna touch on the modern day graffiti, and then we're also gonna touch on how it has progressed. So, yeah. So those are kind of like our
Talking points.
sections. Yeah, talking points. So first of all, graffiti, the word. It comes from the Italian word graffio, which means a scratch, pretty much. But it originates from the Greek word graphene. It's graphEin, and which means to write. So a scratch to write. So that's what
Makes
graffiti.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense. The first forms of graffiti were created prior to the written language, which is crazy.
It was made before?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's wild.
You know, probably like hieroglyphics. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
I think that's what it was. The first drawings on walls emerged thousands of years ago in caves. There's a cave in Argentina called Cueva de las Manos, which pretty much means, it translates to cave of the hands, pretty much.
Okay.
But it's a graffiti in Argentina. It's one of the first ancient graffiti works, and it dates to 13,000 to 9,000 BCE. So yeah, shitload a long time ago. Definitely wasn't born yet.
What's E? What's BCE? I know BC, but what's BCE?
You know, that's a good question, man. That's a good question. Before Christ and
Ever?
everything else.
And everything else.
Ancient graffiti art. A lot of the content from ancient art was religion based, as you can tell. Back then.
Yeah. I think a lot of them had beliefs that I think if they wrote things on the wall that it would come true, or a lot of times legends would be told in stories. That's what stories were told, or if they write them on the walls, that way they can be retold in the same order, pretty much like in the same language as well. So
Wow,
that's pretty dope.
That's pretty interesting. And then also they were mostly like drawings of certain events as well. So I guess you can say they would document stuff. you know? Yeah. So
Before paper and all that.
Before paper.
Phones.
Yeah.
Everything.
For real.
Dude.
Dude, that's how you imagine like seeing a murder and then like, oh shit, man, let me
gotta write this down.
Yeah. Write this down. That's a little extreme, but you get it. So that's kind of like how it started and what the origins were of graffitiing. And now let's move a little bit to the modern day graffiti. In the mid and late 1960s, a guy named Daryl Cornbread McCrae. Cornbread was his nickname, and I'll talk about how he got that in a bit. And Cool Earl. These two are pretty much credited as like the modern day originators of graffitiing.
Yeah.
Cornbread was pretty much, he was a troubled youth in the Philly YDC, which is a juvie in Philadelphia, and actually he got his nickname by the cooks there. The cooks would say that he was always the guy to ask for cornbread, and that's like the only thing he would eat. So that's how he got his name. And that's so crazy. Basically he would be tagging his name all over like the YDC where he was at. and instead of hanging out with like the bad people, all the druggies, and
He's gonna stick to himself and then
use
that was graffiti
his
as his expression.
Exactly. That was his little getaway. But actually, after being released from juvie, he teamed up with other like other artists that became legends as well.
Yeah.
To tag around the city, like Cool Earl, like I said, and some guy named Cool Klepto Kid. He's another legend. You should look him up as well. And other artists around that were around at the time. And actually, a fun fact: this is how he got his girlfriend at the time. He would tag up. Pretty much his girlfriend's name was Cynthia, so he would put Cornbread and Cynthia along her bus route. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, so
that's a funny story. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking like to be in a relationship and then seeing like your significant other doing stuff for you, you know what I mean? Especially if it's not supposed to be done. I feel like there's like a bond between you guys. That's pretty cool. I mean,
yeah, it just makes me think back to like high school. Like I never tagged up shit like that.
Kind of like note passing, but for everybody to see. And then I think what's cool is him doing them in a different fashion every time. So I mean, he's probably mixing it up and I like the different fonts and stuff like that. Especially if you're artistic like that, I think that's pretty dope to be able to do that. Especially doing it publicly to like show other people, to showcase, hey, Cornbread and Cynthia together forever. I mean, I see it all the time. Like I'll go to. I've gone on a couple of different hikes, and like once you reach the top, there's little graffiti there. Shit in the bathroom. You see it all the time, man.
Yeah, that's true.
I think early signs of graffiti were school bathrooms.
School bathrooms for real.
Fucking tucking shit on teachers.
You think she stuck around? Cynthia?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
I hope so.
But soon others followed his steps as well, and many different names and crews were tagging up their names and trying to get their shine. Pretty much how rapping goes nowadays too.
I was like thinking that's like graffiti artists' way of using a tag. So DJs have tags, artists have tags, and then graffiti artists have their own tags as well. So that's like their own signature.
Yeah, pretty much. And after a while, the local paper hinted that Cornbread might have died in a gang shooting. So when Cornbread, he didn't die. This was a false statement. And Cornbread was determined to keep his name alive, saying, he would say, I knew it was up to me to bring my name back to life. So he did this by sneaking into like the Philadelphia Zoo, and he would tag up both sides of an elephant, and he would write Cornbread lives. Like, this is insane.
Damn.
The boss to do that, man. And obviously this landed him in jail, but he was so famous in there that the guards would even ask for his autograph.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and this is a quote from Cornbread himself. My name rang like Jesus Christ. That's crazy. I guess he was really, really famous, man.
That's fuck, dude. I wouldn't even want to get close to an elephant, let alone tag it. I'm trying to think of how that even went down. Like if the elephant was sleeping and he just tagged it up without anything happening, or like he had food for the elephant. I don't know.
Dude, coming face to face with the elephant, that shit's scary. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like, to me, they look kind of evil, man.
I wouldn't.
Fuck that shit. This movement, obviously, this was in Philly, right? So then the movement eventually reached New York City, and then a whole new graffiti was pretty much birthed. The new styles came along and everything. There's an artist named Taki 183, and he's a very famous graffiti artist. Pretty much he was he started doing it because he was bored. He was a bored youth in New York, obviously, and he began tagging his created name. So Taki is a diminutive form of his Greek name, and which is Demetrius. And then the 183 was his street number. And although Taki credits a friend from his block as an inspiration to use the street number, his friend was Julio 204. Taki was the first to turn it into a 24-hour day job.
So he took it on like he
took it on seriously, and that was his life pretty much, and so that's why he gets that credit. But it's cool that he's still like, nah, I wasn't really the first one. It was actually my friend.
He's not taking
Yeah,
the full credit.
uh-huh.
Well, that's dope. Well, shit, because I think a lot of people, especially if you were the first person to do it, it's easy to take over and not give credit to when it's due. So respect to Julio 204 for doing it first. And even just, I think adding the area code or the street name,
Mhm.
any number, if you can find a number that sticks to you and sounds good,
Yeah,
that's good.
that's cool. Taki began tagging all around New York, buses, walls, trains,
Everything.
anything that you can,
Yeah.
you can think of. He would pick spots where most people would see, obviously, and he loved the feeling of writing up his name and getting away with it. I think it's like a rush, that he got.
Question for you: Have you ever tagged anything before?
Have I tagged anything before? I don't think I have.
I've done a couple.
Maybe a bathroom or
Yeah,
something.
just
I don't
to see
know.
what it's like. I just wanted to just
What'd
write
you put?
something.
What'd you
I don't
put?
remember what it put. It's probably a cuss word. Not gonna lie.
lip. If you're reading this, fuck you.
And have it write it even smaller so they squint. Stupid.
Taki he was a bike messenger. That was his main job. So he would take advantage of that by tagging up all the spots that he would go deliver
Yeah.
stuff. There's a quote from him: "You could walk 40 blocks and see my name on every pole." So, yeah, man, he was busy. He was busy. Taki's efforts to tag up all over New York caught attention of the New York Times reporter and gained recognition among the city. It catapulted him to a legendary status among his peers. He is credited as the first New Yorker artist to become famous off of his work. And so he inspired many, many artists who became famous as well.
That's wow.
Yeah.
To be the first one to do that.
Mhm.
Well, first, graffiti in itself, to like just tag it alone, that's already pretty risky. But if you're the first one to do it, you're the first one to break that. Like, imagine like New York City being clean. Just that, the walls being clean, no graffiti, no nothing, and then you writing your name all over the walls, and then like 40 blocks and you see your name on every single pole. Like, shit.
You know what's crazy? The last couple of days I've been, like, I don't know why it's, how like suggestions come up on YouTube?
Yeah.
Well, one of them was New York in like I don't know, when cameras were barely,
Yeah.
barely around. And obviously they cleaned it up and made it a little bit better. But it's crazy because obviously the buildings look the same and everything, but the people totally different. And it reminded me, because you just said clean streets. The streets look really, really clean. Like no garbage anywhere. But it was crazy because back then there was only pretty much two, like for cars, there wasn't lanes or anything. Like people just walk across. If you have a car, you just
Early.
you're just looking out for people walking. It's crazy. So that just reminded me of that. These young artists in Philly and New York all had similar backgrounds. They were creative, they were bold, they were young, they were poor, they really came from nothing, and there wasn't much to do in their free time. So this is why they started doing all this stuff. There's a quote from sprayplanet.com. "You could be on the basketball team, you could be in a gang, or you could be out here and write on the walls." It's pretty much all you
Those
really
are like
had,
the three main things.
Yeah.
I think what's that movie, The Wood, where it says you either gang bang or you play ball. That's kind of like the only two lanes you could really take.
Or if you rap,
Or rap, yeah.
The graffiti work gave these young artists a name. It gave them the respect that they looked for. Many of these teens came from nothing, like I said, so this was their way out. As sociologist Gregory Snyder notes in his book, Graffiti Lives Beyond the Tagging in New York's Urban Underground. As he says in the book, in the purest form, graffiti is a democratic art form that revels in the American dream. In the early 70s, the style was more legible focused and not so much style. So they called themselves writers and not really artists. And I think this was a big thing because they would kind of get mad, like, no, like, call me a writer. Like, I'm not an artist,
Yeah.
This was early, It progressed over time to different styles. And by the mid-70s, graffiti started to become a political target. Mayors were starting to see graffiti as an urban problem in the city, and they vowed to bring an end to the art. And so they would set different strategies to clean up the taggings. However, this was very hard task to do because by this point there's just so much graffiti around, And to try to clean all that shit up, it's I don't know.
And you're talking about trying to stop kids who don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like all the odds are against them. Like
For
nobody's
real.
trying to help them grow or do anything. It's just like, okay, like this is what you guys are doing. We need you guys to stop. And okay, like you were saying, they're writers. So what I could see is that being like messages on the wall or okay, even if it's just your name, like it's more on being legible, like you were saying, versus like style, which I think that's pretty dope. Just because you're just trying to get you're just trying to get your words read. You know what I mean? Like people are trying to see them. You're trying to bring something that, and if you're getting famous off of that, like fuck.
Yeah, you're trying
to do something. You know what I mean? Like that's your only way out.
Exactly, and I would think, like, as an artist myself or as a writer, knowing that there's someone out there trying to stop the only thing that I can really do or that I love doing, fuck that. I'm gonna go even harder.
Yeah, exactly. It only makes you want to do it
exactly,
more.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that, so this is set a guerrilla war. And so where graffiti artists came together and they would fight back with graffiti protests, and they worked together to know what spots were safe and which ones not to hit and all that.
Damn. So now it's starting. You can go anywhere, and now things are getting a little more limited. People are telling you no. So now it's creating a culture and like a way of living where, okay, like you're a graffiti artist, I'm a graffiti artist. Now let's do it together. And I got your back and you got mine. Hey, watch out for these areas because the police are right there. Or, you know what I mean? So that's pretty cool to create that community for them.
Yeah, they had to work together. Jeff Chang, he's a journalist and a music critic. He says the MTA's attempts to whitewash the trains only further intensified the process of stylistic change because there were many more political targets and they're all clean canvases. So again, that was a very, very hard task to do. As a result, Snyder writes, in the 1970s, graffiti soon progressed from scribbled signatures done with magic markers to elaborate masterpieces done with multiple aerosol colors. How do you say aerosol like that?
Aerosol? Yeah.
Aerosol colors in the dark of night. Legibility taking a backseat to style and artistic originality.
So now it's starting to evolve. And it's not writing anymore. It's more of being an art.
Yeah. And so from these writers then they started playing with new lettering styles, flourishes. They started putting flowers on their stuff, stars, crowns, eyeballs, a lot of different things that came together in their work. And now they were creating masterpieces. Like these were actual masterpieces now. They weren't just writings anymore. Yeah. Super Cool 223, another artist. He discovered that a larger spray nozzle allowed for a quicker fill-in of letters. So he's credited as creating the first masterpiece, quote unquote. Phase 2, another artist from the Bronx. He created the now iconic bubble style of aerosol writing, and also called softies, which is all over graffiti writing in this era. So that's the kind of style that I think of when I think of graffiti, like me myself. That's the first thing that comes to me.
I always think of graffiti on the trains. I remember I used to ask my mom, like, "Whoa, like that's so cool. What is that?" And she would say, like, "Oh, it's not really cool. It's kind of bad because it's not people's property." And that became like a stigma, like, okay, graffiti is bad. And that's even to this day, you have the argument whether graffiti is art or it's vandalism, or you know what I mean. It's I think it just depends on where you stand on. You have to look at both sides. Like if you're the owner of the building or the train, like of course you don't want nobody writing on your stuff, but then as a graffiti artist, like you don't have anywhere else to go.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the only thing you can do to get your stuff seen. So that's
yeah, man. And just to let y'all know, we will dedicate, future episodes to certain artists. Like we'll dedicate full episodes and kind of touch on their work. But again, if that's something you don't want to see, let us know. Or if you do really want to see it, just reach out to us. We'll give you what you guys want.
HH Cloverleaf, baby, hit us up. Graffiti progressed much like b-boying did. It was kind of like a form of competition. It didn't matter how old you were, how big you were, how fast you were. What mattered was your skills. So you showcasing your work to the world however you want it, whether it was on a train, it was on a subway, on the walls, it's all up to you. Now, I think that takes guts, man, because imagine you being this inner city kid, troubled, and you don't have anything else to do, so your only form of expression is graffitiing, which is not looked at as a good thing. Now you're playing with fire. So you're playing with fire, but you're also making fire. So I don't know, just kind of... In the 70s is where graffiti really took off, like EC was saying. Subways were being tagged from the inside out. Officials from New York weren't too fond of the wave and began to regulate with fines and then putting offenders in custody. So that's kind of like what we're talking about when they were getting a little more strict with the graffitiing.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're like, okay, like if this isn't gonna stop, then now we're gonna give you X amount of dollar fine and you're gonna do some time. Spray paint was often the go-to use for graffitiing because it was quick and it was efficient and it covered a large area of space with colors, shading, different forms of calligraphy were now being displayed. Much like producers in hip-hop, graffiti use tags, and that's how they take credit for the work. Now, I think we're talking about getting together with we're talking about linking up with other crews, and now you're making I don't want to say gangs, but I think crews is more the fitting word when we're talking about graffiti. Mm-hmm. But then they would claim certain areas of the cities. So you would take the south side, our crew would take the west side, and then you would try to, if you were from the south side, you wanted to take over more, then you would hit other areas, and then people get pissed off because you're tagging the area. So it become kind of like, now we're talking a little more, more gangs. And I think that's where gangs and crews started to really take off, is when you started disrespecting and start crossing lines, which is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Ironic, because graffitiing is breaking the rules. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's a tough place to stand. But in 1983, PBS was one of the very first to introduce graffiti into the mainstream media. They even had a documentary called Style Wars. I think you watched it too, huh? You see?
Yeah.
It's crazy to see, because then you got to see the life of a graffiti artist, even their life at home, not only on the streets, but even like their parents.
That's what was cool to me, to see like how the parents would react.
Mm-hmm. Their parents weren't supportive either. They were
exactly.
They were like, what all hours of the night, you're not doing your homework, and you're just out there graffitiing. And then you can see it in his face. He's like, but this I have nothing else to do. Like, no one else is supporting me. Throughout the film, you can see institutions such as the government and law enforcement tried like absurdly to prevent graffiti in New York City, just because it was creating this like you were talking about. New York was super clean, and then now it's turning into everything's being sprayed. There's names and words on the city being all spread out. It wasn't a good look for the city. The city spent a large sum of money on negative subway advertisements portraying graffiti as a crime. So I think they had like on subways that said you can get fined this amount, or they had like a picture of graffiti and it had that red circle with the cross in between. The mayor at the time, which is Ed Koch,
Koch.
I don't know.
Koch. I was waiting for you.
Maybe. Koch? I don't know. I gotta call.
My bad, man. We're talking shit.
We'll call him Ed Koch because he's being a cock. But the mayor, Ed Koch, he pushed for fences and guard dogs to prevent people from tagging. So he was like, nah, like nobody is gonna do this, or you're gonna, the dogs are gonna get you. So it just mentions how like teens who would spray paint murals on the side of walls had no other places to do so. So they wanted to intentionally break the law because they saw how much pushback they were getting for doing what they love. So it's just like that. You pushing, so I'm gonna push even harder.
You tell a kid not to do something,
they're gonna do it.
They're gonna want to do it, even if they didn't want to do it.
So graffitiing is considered one of the 4 elements of hip hop, and that's why we're touching on it, along with DJing, MCing, and b-boying. And these are the 4 major creative expressions of art, pretty much.
And graffitiing, I think, is the most underrated one to me,
I think so
along
too.
with b-boying as well. I don't know. They don't get much love.
In
That's
hip-
why
I-
we're trying to cover
Yeah,
them.
we want to spotlight and we want to showcase like these are all important elements of hip hop and they all have something to do. I was thinking when I think of graffiti in hip hop, I always think of album artwork and how much it adds to the music as well. So then now I'm thinking of different artists, different musical artists who reach out to artists who either paint or draw or just something like that, and they link up and they do a collab. I think that shows the guts to like reach out to somebody else and do something with them and then show the world something else. Like I think that to me is what stands out the most. All this started in the Bronx, in New York. So the East Coast is really the birthplace of hip hop, which I think West Coast rappers and West Coast music lovers don't like to say that, just because, you know what I mean? 'Cause then it kind of takes away a little bit of like the oomph from the West Coast. I think West Coast rap or West Coast hip hop is a little more flashy. It's a little more laid back, and then on the East Coast is really really grimy. Like there's no escaping what they did. That's just my 2 cents on that. We're gonna have another episode on East and West, so stay tuned. Graffitiing represented the visual, MCing and DJing represented like the music, and then b-boying was the dance. So you mix all these together, and that's what creates hip hop. In the early days of hip hop, all of these four elements were deeply intertwined. Thinking back to DJ Kool Herc when he was on the turntables and he was MCing and people were dancing and there was graffiti going on. Like it's just an environment that you wanted to be a part of. Graffiti artists were often b-boys and MCs as well. Like usually people tried all the different elements, and you would kind of pick the one you were best at. At all the hottest parties, you would see like a writer doing this thing on the wall while the DJ spins and scratches and the MC rides with the crowd. So everybody had their own thing. And then graffiti artists often did it for themselves and not for others. Like it was more their intent to get their messages on the wall, like we were talking about earlier, versus like making it look super nice for somebody else. Like it wasn't supposed to be for anybody else but for you. But as it progressed and changed, you wanted to make it more visually appealing to the average person, so they could be like, oh shoot, what is that? And then they see your signature and they see your work all over the wall. So graffiti is the written word of hip hop, and the subway was like the underground city for the artist.
All right, let's move on to graffiti today. So now, and today I want to highlight of a specific artist, Banksy. Banksy. He is a famous graffiti artist, but he's an anonymous graffiti artist. So he keeps his identity a secret. He's kind of like a superhero, man.
Honestly.
For real. There's an article right now that I'm looking at right now. I'm gonna post it as well so you guys can see it. But here it says he produces pieces of work which pops up in public places, such as on the walls of buildings, all kinds of places. A lot of his art is done in a particular style which people can easily recognize. And this style is, I don't know, how would you describe his style, man?
It's kind of like a stencil, I almost want to say. I've bought a poster of his. I've looked at multiple art pieces from him, and they're all pretty similar. They're all either like, when I say stencil, I mean it's like a shadow of a person, and then he adds whatever the element of the message he's trying to say. For example, there's like a back in, I don't remember when, but I think the French were going into war, and so he created this, like, it was like a guy. It was basically like a black and white picture of a guy. Like, picture him standing like he was going to throw a grenade. So he has got like his hand in the back, his legs spread out, and he's like going to throw something. But instead of it being like a grenade or anything violent, it was flowers. So what he was saying, what he was
wow.
trying to say is like, even though this is going on, the fight is really for peace, and that's what the flowers would represent. So
Wow.
there was always something,
That's
a
powerful.
part of his messages, which that's why he's so big and controversial, is because he puts out messages that make you really think. One other one that sticks out is two police officers, kind of that same just black and white format, but these are two police officers like in shows them like making out.
Oh
And
shit.
I can tell police officers
Haven't
probably
seen that
were like,
one.
what the fuck? Like, hey, like, nah, you can't do that. But other people who don't like police officers like, look. So it just created buzz. And then buildings or wherever these were done at, they either want them taken down or somebody would want to keep it. So his pieces would sell for thousands, even millions of dollars, or they were just kept for whoever the building owner was or whatever it was. So his art is very like, it's very quick strike. It's very boom. You either see it or you don't. Some like they would get taken down sometimes. So if he were to have a piece and you were in town, like you better go look at it.
That's
Crazy.
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't want to spend too much time on Banksy, but I just wanted to highlight him because he's one of the the newer artists that, well, not newer, but he's been around for a while, but he's more of the
talked about,
modern.
yeah.
Yeah. And so he like O was saying, he's very controversial sometimes with his art. And his art costs us a lot as well. So but anyways, in today's graffiti as well, today graffiti is looked at as either vandalism or freedom of speech. And as for the public and the government, they look at it as vandalism for sure. Today's subject matter in graffiti is pretty much many controversial topics, like politics, global warming, capitalism, bunch of controversial stuff, and many different subjects are shown through the art.
I could think of like the BLM movement and the
Yeah.
graffiti all around
Yeah.
America.
That's big right now.
Not only
Yeah.
America but the world.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pictures of like the injustice being shown through visuals, and I think that's like, what's the saying? A picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you see a
Mhm.
big old picture showing the injustice, or even just a photo of one person's face, example George Floyd, you throw that on there, you know exactly what people are talking about.
Yeah.
Including the global pandemic of the coronavirus, like masks everywhere. It's just something about an image that says a lot more than just words.
Yeah, man. Look, right now, I think these two pieces, the BLM movement and the pandemic, that's obviously that's big right now. So I think that's worth highlighting, and I think you'll see that all around now. Like even if you go out in Portland, we see a lot of course, a lot of that riots that have been happening in the past year. But so that's reflected in the graffiti you see there even now. But yeah, so you see that, and the whole Donald Trump thing. You see a lot of murals of him, political statements about him, and everything. And shit's crazy out right now. Today, graffiti has evolved, and it's still evolving. Artists are getting more creative. An example of this is using like surroundings to get the message across. So like global warming tagging from there's a picture. I know obviously you guys can't see it, but I'm gonna put it up on our socials and everything, so you guys could see this. But this is the example that I'm saying. The global warming, it pretty much is just a tagging of letters. It just says, I don't believe in global warming. But the way they wrote it, they put it on the wall where there's like it looks like it's like a bank or somehow, but there's a lot of water, and the water is covering part of the letters, like half of the bottom letters, the global warming. So that's like a representation of like, it's ironic pretty much. It's saying I don't believe in global warming, but look at
But half of the painting is being covered by water because of global warming.
Exactly. I want to highlight there's a thing called the Google Street Art Project. That's pretty cool because they're like a movement that displays graffiti like worldwide, and they started to explain the context and the backgrounds of the art itself. And it's pretty much, it's a database for street art, and they give virtual tours, online exhibitions. It's pretty cool, man. I think that's a great thing that Google
it's a great
is
outlet
doing.
yeah, especially a company like Google that's so big. So now we're teaming up so the people that were telling you no, the big companies and the big corporations that are saying no, no, no. Now you have one that is saying yes, we want to support you, we want to help you, we want to get even deeper to just looking at it. Why so now they're asking the artists questions, and then now their art can be on full display with a full explanation.
Yeah, man. Props to Google for doing that. They're keeping this cult this movement alive. You know, the graffiti. So that's cool.
Shout out Google.
Shout out Google.
We love Google.
Graffiti today is
Fuck
seen
me.
as a.
Just kidding.
Graffiti is seen as a silent rebellion. So why silent is because the form of the expression through its strategic placement, and so you know, they put it in places where it's not really like public, like everybody knows about it, but I don't know, it's just very strategic. It's places where you see it, but it's not like everybody can see it.
Nothing's being said, but there's a message.
Yeah, there you go. Typically graffiti is seen in like rough areas. However, it's been heavily placed in like mid suburban areas as well, especially today. I want to highlight, of course, the Kobe murals today. We are big Laker fans. You know, don't come at us. But yeah, there's one out in Portland, only one, unfortunately, that we know of at least.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very cool. You can see these all around the world. We follow a page, I forgot, it's called Kobe Murals, I believe,
Murals, yeah.
where they show all the Kobe murals around the whole world. So that's pretty cool if you guys want to check that out. But yeah, like we touched on Banksy, there's so much about this guy, and pretty much in short, he's a cultural icon. And there's a thing called the Banksy effect, which is crazy. This term is in reference to the artist's ability to turn outsider art into the cultural mainstream. It was coined to reference the way in which Banksy's work has led to an increased interest in street art. Street art has been incorporated into being a part of culture and the daily life. His work, in turn, has questioned the authenticity of art and its creators, furthering the cultural debate that has existed for centuries. Banksy, there's a quote by him, says, "If you want to say something and have people listen, then you have to wear a mask." His artwork can be rebellious and is known for delivering political messages. When Banksy leaves his artwork on buildings, there can sometimes be arguments about who owns the pieces and what should be done with them, and you know, if they are valuable, kind of like how O was saying earlier. And then sometimes people want to sell them to raise money for a cause, while like others think that his work should be left alone and, you know, just enjoyed by others. So shout out Banksy, man.
Banksy.
Shout out Banksy. All right, man. So that's pretty much everything that we have for you today for graffiti, man. I just want to ask, before we leave, what do you think is next for graffiti?
Since we've been covering graffitiing as a leaf on Hip Hop Cloverleaf, I've noticed it a lot more. I've been paying attention a lot more, and I appreciate it more. I can't think of what's the guy's name. We went to Portland, and I think his name is Oliver Uno. I think is his name. Like, I've seen it in different fonts.
Yeah.
That's his name, and like I've seen it like, and just I've been paying more attention. And the more you pay attention, I think like you're just more aware. I think graffiti, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I think especially with social media, that it's going to, if anything, be even bigger, because now you can take a picture of it, post it. Now, I don't know how that plays with like getting in trouble because you were doing graffiti on a place that you're not supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but I don't think that's going to stop people from doing it. Like, I think it's still going to be alive and well. I can, even with the BLM and the coronavirus thing, like seeing how big those got and how far across the world they were spread out, I don't think graffiti is going anywhere. If anything, I think it's getting better.
Yeah, man. And I want to highlight the impact that graffiti has had on the hip hop culture. One thing that stood out from that said earlier, the album cover arts. That's huge. You know, obviously, for me, I'm a huge fan of cover arts when it comes to albums. Some of the good ones that I can just think of off the top of my head, like The Games, Jesus Peace, Kid Cudi's Kids See Ghosts with Kanye. You know, there's a whole lot of great album art, but I think that comes from the graffiti element, in one way or another. This is the fourth. Well, I don't want to say the fourth, but It's one element of hip hop, and so please don't sleep on it, man. Many people do. Graffitiing,
Pay attention.
It's powerful, man.
I want to challenge you. I want to challenge the listeners to look out for graffiti. Like, watch what it's saying. See if you can find some of the same artists in different locations.
Yeah, man, and let us know how, tag us on stuff. If you see
at HH Cloverleaf, baby.
Yeah, if you see some cool stuff that you might want to share with us, we'll gladly look at it and give our feedback as well.
Mm-hmm. Before we close out today's episode, Hip Hop Cloverleaf wants to thank you for listening and being a part of our journey. To show gratitude, we're hosting a giveaway for the Hip Hop Cloverleaf family. February 24th of 2021, which is 2 weeks after launch, we're going to be giving away a vinyl, and it's Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly.
In order to enter the giveaway, here are the steps you must follow. 1, you must subscribe to the podcast on any platform, that is Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform, and take a screenshot of you being subscribed. 2, post it on your story on IG or Facebook and tag us. We will announce one winner on February 24th on our episode, so make sure to tune into that episode to see if you won. We will contact you via social media, and you will have 24 hours after that to claim your prize. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode where we just touched on the origins of graffitiing. We didn't go too deep in it, but we just gave you a little intro about how it all came together. If you like our podcast, subscribe. And if you like what you hear, recommend it to your friends or your family, anybody who might want to listen. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HH Cloverleaf for more content, or if you want us to ask questions, just reach out to us, man. Check out our website, hiphopcloverleaf.com, for bonus content. In the next episode, we are going to be doing an album review to Westside Gunn's Pray for Paris. Shout out all the graffiti artists in the world. Shout out Banksy. Shout out all the hip-hop heads around the world. Shout out the Cloverleaf fam. If you guys are still listening to us, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you are here with us, and we appreciate that, man. This is Hip Hop Cloverleaf. Peace.